2015 is going to be one hell of a good year for racing games. I'm very excited about two games in particular. One of them is Project Cars. If you've ever come to one of my live streams before, I talk about this game a lot. I haven't actually played it myself yet, but it is coming out at the end of next month, and I'm going to do a bunch of videos on it. I'm very excited about that. Another game I'm very excited about is obviously Forza Motorsport 6. That is supposed to come out late September, early October. We don't really know yet. They haven't really said. But these two games are going to be going up head-to-head against each other. And I want to talk about what is Forza 6 going to have to do to compete with Project Cars. The main reason I'm so excited about Project Cars is because it actually features a lot of the things we've been asking for of Forza Motorsport for the past couple of years. One of the big ones is weather. Weather's always caused problems with Forza Motorsport. I'll get into that in a little bit. But Project Cars is actually going to be featuring a full weather cycle as well as a full day-night cycle, which is going to be very, very interesting. Assuming Forza wants to actually compete with Project Cars, they are definitely going to have to toss in weather. It's been in GT games before, it's been in Forza Horizon. There is absolutely no reason why it's not in Forza Motorsport. I know it's caused problems before, I'll get into that a little bit later on, but let's talk about the car list. So yeah, let's just talk about the car list real quick. Obviously, both games haven't released the full car list. However, Project Cars and their demo beta things showed off some of the cars that would actually be in the game. But like I said, we still don't know the entire car list. We're going to have to find that out at launch. As well as Forza 6. Forza has only said like 3 or 4 of the cars that are actually going to be in the game. One thing, however, Project Cars said that they are going to have go-karts, which is actually really, really cool. I know actually a lot of you guys actually do a lot of go-kart racing. It's basically the main way to actually get into the whole racing scene. And just having go-karts in a game makes it that little bit more extra special. I don't know if that's just me, but that's a little bonus feature. I don't really think it's going to be in Forza 6, but fingers crossed that Turn 10 has something up their sleeve for Forza 6 that's a little bit special like that. Let's also talk about the track lists. Again, both games have not released their full track list again, but Project Cars, as the game's coming out in a month, has released a lot of the tracks that are going to be in the game. Some of the tracks that I've wanted for so long in a Forza game that are going to be in Project Cars. Things like Brands Hatch, Imola, Monza, and Simply Sausages, Donington Raceway. Those are just really cool tracks that we've never had in Forza 6. Basically, Forza's gonna have to bring up their game a lot on the car list front and the track lists if they do want to compete with Project Cars. So you might be saying, hey Nick, what's the issue with 60 frames per second? Well, they tried to actually do it in Forza Horizon 2, but you might know that that's actually 30 frames per second because of all the work that has to go into dealing with weather and things like that. Basically what's happening is the weather and the day-night cycles on the Xbox overload the computer power of the Xbox so much that it can't actually run at 60 frames per second. Therefore, they had to backpedal down to 30. You might be saying, what's the issue with 30 frames per second? Well, there's actually a couple problems. The main one is that it's a standard now for racing games. Pretty much every racing game that's been coming out is 60 frames per second, and if it doesn't have that, it gets hit big time with people going, oh, it's a bad game, it's not 60 frames per second. Things like that, it's just no. Another one that actually isn't so important, but every single Forza Motorsport game since Forza Motorsport 2 has been 60 frames per second. So they probably want to withhold that record sort of thing. So if you don't understand what frame rates are and everything, I'm gonna show you. The guys over at Elgato actually gave me this. They sent me this, the Game Capture HD 60, to actually record games in 60 frames per second. So I went into Forza 5, got 2 computers running, one recording with this guy and one recording with my old one that does 30 frames per second. So I've got 2 feeds, one that's 30 and one that's 60, and I'll show you the difference. So in here, I've actually edited together 2 different feeds. The one on the right is from an HD 60, that's my new capture card. The one on the left is my old one. So if I just play it here, it looks fairly similar. Both of them seem to be pretty much doing the exact same thing. But if I actually pause it and I slow it down, that's where you can see the big differences. So what I'm gonna do now is move frame by frame. So what's gonna happen is the video on the right is going to move 2 frames for every 1 frame that moves on the left. So if you notice, something happens on the right when it doesn't happen on the left. Basically what's happening is you're missing out on half of all of the footage that's coming to your Xbox. And basically that little thing there, those different frame rates, 30 frames per second compared to 60 frames per second, is now a standard, and it's incredibly difficult to do. So that's basically what the frame rate is and what it does exactly and why it's so important. Project Cars has already told us that it's going to be 60 frames per second. Forza, we still don't know. If we look at Forza Horizon 2, where they tried to put the weather in, they weren't able to achieve 60 frames per second, so they dropped it down to 30. But basically what this whole video is about, Forza 6 going up Project Cars, they gotta get that 60 frames per second going along with that weather. There's actually one more thing that Forza's gonna have an issue competing with. Project Cars is going to be available for the PC, PS4, Wii U for whatever reason, and Xbox One. So it's not really something they have control over so much, but I thought it was worth mentioning that Project Cars is actually going to be on every games platform. So if you ask me, Forza is definitely going to have to pull up its socks if they want to compete with games like Project Cars, GT7 that we don't even know anything about yet. I'm pretty sure they're going to bring some pretty crazy stuff to the table. So yeah, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for an awesome Forza 6, but to be honest, it's going to be tough for them to compete. So let me know what you think Forza is going to have to do to be able to compete with all these new games that are coming out this year. Let me know in the comments down below. Anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, like, and stuff and things, and I will see you guys in the next one.